The morning after her husband's funeral, Margaret Holloway stood at the edge of the vineyard they had built together, her hands still marked by decades of work and love. The air was thick with the scent of soil and unfinished goodbyes. She thought the hardest part of grief was over until her children arrived with polished smiles, legal folders, and a plan to take everything she had left. By sundown, she would learn that betrayal can sound polite. Look professional and drive away without looking back. My name is Margaret Holloway, though most people in town still call me Maggie, the way my late husband did. I am 66 years old, and for 40 years I have lived among these vines, rows upon rows of green that whisper when the wind passes through them. They say grief is loud, that it screams through you, but mine arrived in silence. That morning, the air over Holloway Vineyards was silver with mist. The funeral had ended hours ago. Neighbors had gone home, their condolences fading like the echo of church bells. Only the vines remained, faithful, rooted, and patient, just as they were the day Daniel and I planted the first row with our bare hands. I stood where the dew gathered on the tips of the leaves, breathing in the damp scent of soil and memory. "You were always the dreamer, Daniel," I whispered, and I was the hands that kept it alive. The house behind me was too quiet. Inside, the air smelled faintly of lilies from the funeral and the wood polish Daniel used on weekends. I reached for his chair out of habit, only to find it empty, the cushion still indented with his weight. The silence felt heavier than the coffin that morning. The sunlight was brighter then, and Daniel's laughter filled the air. Ethan, our eldest, was 10, tugging at the hem of his father's shirt, eager to help tie the vines. One day, "Son," Daniel said, handing him the twine, "you'll make this vineyard bigger than we ever dreamed." Ethan's eyes had glowed with pride. Rachel, still a child, ran barefoot between the rows, singing about fairies hiding in grape leaves. Those were the days before ambition and distance began to shape my children's hearts. When I opened my eyes again, the present returned, duller, heavier. The kitchen clock ticked. The refrigerator hummed. Ethan stood by the window, still in his suit, scrolling through messages on his phone. Rachel sat across the table, stirring untouched coffee, her gold bracelet catching the light. "Mom," Ethan said gently, though his tone was all business. "We should talk about practical matters. The vineyard, the house, the next steps." "Tomorrow," I said quietly, placing a hand on the table to steady myself. "Tonight, we remember your father." He hesitated, then nodded, slipping his phone back into his pocket. Rachel gave me a small smile, polite, practiced, distant. Dinner that night was mechanical. The sound of cutlery scraping plates echoed through the room like small reminders of everything unsaid. Ethan mentioned deadlines in Seattle. Rachel spoke of her next wellness retreat in California. Neither of them spoke of Daniel. When the dishes were cleared and the night grew thick, I found myself standing at the doorway, watching them move through the house as if it already belonged to someone else. Outside, the wind picked up, brushing against the lace curtains Daniel and I had chosen decades ago at a roadside store. The pattern had faded, but the light still fell through it in soft golden threads. I walked to the porch, the floorboards creaking beneath my steps, and looked out over the vineyard. From here, the land stretched endlessly, a sea of vines, each one carrying a story of patience and labor. Daniel used to say the vines could feel when you loved them. Tonight, they seemed to watch me in silence, the leaves shifting gently, as if whispering their condolences. I wrapped my shawl tighter around my shoulders. Somewhere in the darkness, an owl called out, lonely and certain. "The vines remember," I murmured. Even when people forget, the moon rose over the hills, painting the vineyard silver. Behind me, my children's voices faded into another room, soft, cautious, and practical. I did not need to hear the words to know the topic: numbers, inheritance, and the quiet urgency of settling things. The funeral had ended, but something far colder had just begun. Morning did not come gently. It arrived like a blade of pale light cutting through the kitchen curtains, landing across the same worn wooden table where Daniel used to read seed catalogs and circle them in pencil. I stood at the stove, measuring coffee the way he liked it. Real grounds, water just below a boil, a slow pour from my old kettle. The scent rose warm and familiar, earthy and honest. Ethan walked in without looking at me first. His tie was already knotted. His sleeves were crisp. He set his phone on the table face down, then placed a small metal canister beside it. "Mom," he said, "I brought you something better. Single origin, low acid. You will like this." He said it like a promise. He said it like a correction. He pulled a sleek machine from his bag, assembled it in practiced motions, and poured himself a dark, concentrated espresso into a small glass cup he had also brought with him. His coffee was sharp and bitter. Mine was smooth and soft. The air between the two cups felt like a quiet argument. Rachel came in moments later. Her hair was fixed, her blouse pressed, her expression cautious. She smiled at me in a way that did not quite reach her eyes. "Good morning, Mom," she said softly, and kissed the top of my head. Her hands trembled for a moment against my shoulder. Then she sat. I poured my coffee into a ceramic mug with a crack near the handle. The same mug Daniel had always stolen when he thought I was not looking. For one single moment, it almost felt like an ordinary morning. Then, Ethan cleared his throat. "We need to talk about next steps," he said. Not, "Are you eating?" Not, "How did you sleep?" Not even, "How are you?" Next. Steps. He opened a folder. My chest tightened. Rachel watched him. Her fingers were folded together, but she kept rubbing at her thumb the way she used to do as a little girl when she was trying not to cry. I have always known the difference between my children's calm and my children's fear. "Your father wanted me to handle the transition," Ethan said. "The transition?" I repeated. "The vineyard," he said. "The land. The house. He told me to make sure you were taken care of. He did not want you to have to manage all of this alone." Rachel nodded quickly. "Mom, you deserve rest. You should not be lifting crates or chasing seasonal workers or worrying about irrigation schedules. You have done that for decades. You could have peace now. Peace." It was such a gentle word. It sat on the table between us like a glass ornament. Too pretty, too fragile, too dishonest. Ethan slid a set of documents toward me. "This is the plan," he said. I did not touch it. "Not yet," he continued, almost relieved to be speaking a language he understood. "There is a buyer," he said, "a development group. They are offering far above market. The number is good, Mom. It is very good. We could all benefit, and you could be comfortable. We already looked at a community near Santa Barbara. Private, quiet medical staff on site. Fitness classes, social activities. You would not be alone." Daniel's chair sat empty at the head of the table. I could feel the absence of his body the way you can feel the absence of a limb that is no longer there. Rachel leaned in. Her voice was soft, almost pleading. "You would have friends your own age," she said. "You would not have to cook if you did not want to. You could just live, Mom. Just live." Her eyes were wet. Mine were not. "Your father signed off on this," Ethan said. "He wanted it done." That was when I looked at the papers. The first page bore the letterhead of a company I did not recognize, not the family lawyer who had guided Daniel and me through every bad harvest, every tax season, every hard year. There were phrases and sections, all written in clean professional language that did not sound like Daniel at all. I turned to the signature line. There it was. His name, Daniel Holloway. Perfect, steady, certain. He had not written like that in months. Near the end, his hand shook so badly I had to guide the pen for him, even when he only wanted to sign a birthday card for our granddaughter. The morphine had softened his edges. The pain had bent his will. But here, on this document, his name looked like a younger man's hand. Firm, unbroken, impossible. My stomach went cold. "This is not from Arthur," I said. My voice was quiet, but the room seemed to feel it. Ethan stiffened. "Arthur is old-fashioned," he said. "He still does everything on paper and wants to talk about water rights and zoning lines." He was slowing everything down. "Dad wanted this handled in a clean, modern way." "Your father trusted Arthur," I said. "He trusted him for 30 years. "He trusted me," Ethan replied. The way he said it almost pierced me. Because he believed it. He truly believed it. In his mind, he was not stealing. He was executing. He was finishing his father's work. In Ethan's memory, Daniel had told him, "One day you will make this vineyard bigger than we ever dreamed." In mine, On the nights Daniel could not sleep from the pain, Daniel had whispered to me, "We should have kept it small, Maggie. We should have kept it in the family. Two truths could live in the same house and still never touch." Rachel reached out and placed her hand over mine. "Mom," she said, her voice shaking, "please do not make this harder than it has to be. We are trying to help you." Help! That word tasted like ash. I looked at her hand. Her fingers were warm. I could feel her pulse racing under her skin. "This community," Ethan said, tapping one of the pages, "is called Sageview. It is quiet. It is safe. We already spoke to the director. A room has been prepared for you." My eyes lifted slowly. "A room," I said. He smiled, relieved. "Yes. You would not have to worry about falling, or the stairs, or being out here alone so far from town. It is the responsible choice. For a moment I could not hear the refrigerator anymore. I could not hear the clock. All I could hear was the sound of Daniel, in our bedroom in the final weeks, reaching for my hand in the dark. "Promise me," he had whispered, breath trembling, "that you will not let them turn this place into concrete." I drew a slow breath. "We will talk tomorrow," I said. Ethan frowned. "Mom, there is nothing to think." "We will talk tomorrow," I repeated, and this time he went silent. I gathered our coffee cups. My hands were steady, even though I could feel my heart striking against my ribs like something trapped in a cage. That night the house did not sleep. I went upstairs alone. I did not cry. I had not cried at the funeral, and I would not cry now. Grief is private. Betrayal is not. Betrayal must be seen. I opened the bathroom cabinet and slid out the false panel Daniel installed back in 1987, after a break-in down the road. Behind it was a metal tin with a rusted latch. I carried it to the bedroom and sat on the edge of the bed we had shared for 4 decades. Inside that box were things that did not look like much. Old papers, a folded photograph, a key, and 1 deed, 15 acres, registered in my maiden name, land sitting over the natural spring. The only reliable year-round water source on the entire property. I remembered Daniel's voice the day we signed it. Not romantic, not dramatic, practical. "Always keep something that is yours, Maggie," he had said. "Just in case. Just in case." My fingers tightened around the paper. They thought they were moving pieces on a board. But they did not even know which pieces existed. The next morning, Ethan was waiting by the truck. He looked focused, efficient, already in motion. Rachel stood beside him, arms wrapped around herself as if she was cold, though the air was mild. "Let us take you to see Sageview," Ethan said. "You do not have to decide today. Just come look. You will see." Rachel's eyes met mine. They were shining. "It really is lovely, Mom," she whispered. "It is by the coast. You would hear the ocean at night. You always said you loved the ocean." Her voice cracked on the last word. I did not argue. I did not resist. I let Ethan open the passenger door for me. I let Rachel buckle my seatbelt, like I was something fragile. I folded my hands in my lap and rested the deed, hidden against my ribs. The truck pulled away from the house. We drove past the tasting room, past the old barn Daniel never quite got around to repairing, past the rows of vines lined like soldiers holding their ground. I watched them through the glass, and every post, every trellis, every coil of wire felt like a goodbye. No one spoke. The paved road gave way to gravel. Gravel gave way to a narrow dirt lane cut between fallow fields and scrub pine. My stomach shifted. We were not heading toward the coast. We were heading away from everything. "Ethan," Rachel said quietly, her voice shaking now. "This is not the way to Sageview." His jaw clenched. "Do not start." "Ethan," she whispered again. "We said we would talk to her. Not." The truck slowed. He pulled to the side of an empty service road where there was nothing but low brush and a distant fence line. No houses, no witnesses, no sound but the engine ticking as it cooled. Then he put the truck in park. For a long moment, no one moved. I could hear my own pulse. I could hear Rachel's breath hitching beside me. Ethan finally turned to face me. His expression was controlled, almost calm. "This," he said, his voice level, "is where you get off, Mom. Rachel gasped. Ethan, no. This is not what we said. We were supposed to ease her into it. We were supposed to give her time. This is the cleanest way, he said through his teeth. She will fight us. You know she will. This way is kinder than a courtroom. Kinder. He opened my door. For a moment, I stayed seated. My hands were folded in my lap. I could feel the outline of the deed pressing into my side like a second spine. I stepped down from the truck. The air smelled like dust and sun-warmed grass. The wind lifted the hem of my coat. The sky above us was cloudless and bright. Rachel was crying now. The mascara she had so carefully applied that morning had started to pool at the corner of her eye. Mom, she whispered, voice breaking. Please do not make this worse. We will send your things. We will make sure you have everything you need. Just do not call a lawyer. Please, please. Her fear was real. Her guilt was real. Her love, I could not tell any more. I straightened my shoulders. Ethan closed the door. He did not look at me again. He put the truck in gear. This is for the best, he said. The truck rolled forward, then faster still. Dust exploded behind it, swallowing the road, swallowing the shape of my children, turning them into silhouettes, then into shadows, then into nothing at all. And there I was, alone on a dirt road with a small bag at my feet, a deed against my heart, and the last fragments of the life I had built blowing past me in a cloud of grit. The silence that followed was not empty. It was the sound of something breaking. It was the sound of something beginning. The road stretched ahead, a ribbon of pale dust and silence. Wind whispered through dry grass. Somewhere behind me, the sound of the truck was fading. First an echo, then nothing at all. For a long moment I could not move. My body stood there. But my mind was still sitting in that passenger seat, watching the reflection of my son's jaw tighten, the shadow of my daughter's tears trembling on her lashes. My children had left me. My blood, my flesh, my every sacrifice they had driven away as if I were luggage they no longer needed. The air smelled of earth and gasoline. The sun pressed down on my shoulders, but the cold came from the inside. They thought they left me with nothing, I murmured. But they forgot. I know every root beneath their feet. I began to walk. The suitcase was light, packed by their hands, not mine. Inside were a few clothes, a bottle of medicine, and nothing that truly belonged to me. The weight of it was not in the handle, but in my chest. The gravel shifted beneath each step. Dust rose around my shoes, clinging to my skirt, turning it the same color as the road. Every few minutes I stopped and looked back, though I knew no one was coming. The hills rolled in soft lines, endless and empty. The late afternoon sun had begun to fall, long shadows stretching across the fields. Somewhere far away, a crow called out once, twice, then silence again. My breath grew shallow. My knees ached. Still, I walked. Each step drew me farther from betrayal, closer to something I could not yet name. The air was warmer in that memory, sweet with ripening fruit. Daniel had been pruning a row near the fence line. I had come to bring him lemonade, the glass sweating in my hand. If you ever lose your way, he said, trimming another branch with steady hands, follow the vines. They will always lead you home. I had laughed then, brushing hair from my eyes. You make it sound as if the vines have a soul. They do, he said simply. They remember who tends them. That memory returned now like the faint echo of a song, steadying me when the road began to blur beneath the shimmer of heat. The sky deepened from gold to amber. I passed a stretch of fencing half fallen into weeds. A rusted mailbox leaned at an angle, its nameplate long since erased by weather. I kept walking until the road bent toward a field where young pines grew wild. That was when I heard it. A distant hum. Then music. A pickup truck appeared over the hill. 2 figures inside, a young couple, faces glowing with the careless joy of new love. Their windows were down. The radio played a song I had not heard in decades, our song. The one Daniel and I had danced to on our wedding night in a barn strung with fairy lights. The sound broke me open. I stepped off the road and sank to the ground beside the fence. My body folded as if it had remembered how to cry. My hands covered my face. but the tears found their way through the cracks. For the first time since the funeral, I let the grief come. Not the quiet kind that sits politely in your chest, but the kind that shakes you from the inside out. I cried for Daniel, for the orchard, for the woman I had been before ambition stole my children's hearts. The truck passed, the music fading into distance. When it was gone, the world was still again. The wind brushed my face, drying the tears. I breathed, slow and deliberate. I was not strong yet, but I was still standing. The sun slipped lower. The horizon glowed the color of honey. My throat was dry, my feet swollen. I had walked for miles before I saw the faded sign, Miller's Gas and Grocery. 2 miles ahead. 2 miles. I could manage 2 miles. I whispered Daniel's words to myself as a rhythm for my steps. Follow the vines. They will lead you home. By the time I reached the station, twilight had arrived. The sky was the deep blue of a bruise. A neon sign flickered above the door. Open 24 hours. Its hum steady and low. Inside, the cool air smelled faintly of motor oil and coffee. Shelves lined with canned peaches and dusty cereal boxes filled the small space. Behind the counter, a man looked up, gray hair, kind eyes, a towel over one shoulder. "Mrs. Holloway?" he asked. "Is that really you?" I blinked, recognizing him. "Ray Miller," I said, my voice hoarse. "You still keep this place running?" He chuckled softly. "Barely. You look like you have walked through half the county. You all right?" I hesitated. There were so many answers to that question, none of them simple. "I need to use your phone," I said. He gestured toward the small office in the back. "Of course. Go ahead." The rotary phone sat on a wooden desk beside a half-empty mug of coffee. I lifted the receiver, the dial tone steady in my ear. My fingers trembled slightly as I turned the numbers I still remembered by heart. "Arthur Blake," a familiar voice answered. "Arthur," I whispered. "It is Maggie." There was a pause. Then the sound of his chair scraping back. "Maggie. Thank God. I have been trying to reach you. Ethan brought me a version of Daniel's will, but it did not match the one we updated last year. I had concerns. I need your help," I said quietly, "and your discretion." "You have both," he replied. "Come to my office tomorrow morning. Do not speak to anyone else until then." "Thank you, Arthur." When I hung up, my hand lingered on the receiver. For the first time since I had stepped out of that truck, I felt something steady inside me. Purpose. Ray appeared in the doorway. "Everything all right, Mrs. Holloway?" "Yes," I said softly. "Better than before." He nodded. "You need anything else? Water? Food? A bottle of water and a prepaid phone if you have one." He brought both to the counter. When I reached for my wallet, he waved me off. "On the house," he said. "You tell me if you need a ride somewhere. Kindness is a strange thing. It can undo you more completely than cruelty." "Thank you, Ray," I whispered. He smiled. "You will be all right, ma'am. I can see it in your eyes." Outside, the night had deepened. The neon sign glowed against the dark, humming gently like a heartbeat. I sat on the bench beside the door, the prepaid phone and the water bottle in my lap. Across the road, the silhouettes of trees swayed softly under the stars. I looked down at my hands, the lines etched deep from years of work, of love, of loss. They were not the hands of a helpless woman. They were the hands of someone who had built things from the ground up and could do so again. I lifted my face to the sky. The stars were faint but clear. Somewhere beyond them, perhaps, Daniel was watching. "You left me behind, Ethan," I whispered. "But you left the truth with me." The wind stirred, carrying the scent of dust and distant rain. I closed my eyes and listened to it. It sounded almost like the vineyard at night alive, waiting, whispering back. Tomorrow I would rise before dawn and walk again, but tonight I simply breathed, letting the quiet fill me until it no longer felt like emptiness. Morning came pale and watchful. The town was still waking when I climbed the narrow staircase to Arthur Blake's office. His practice was above the old bakery on Maple Street, in a building that leaned a little to one side and smelled faintly of paper, ink, and cinnamon. The hallway creaked under my steps. I felt each creak in my bones. Arthur was already standing when I entered. He had laid everything out on his desk as if preparing for a small war. His glasses sat low on his nose. His hands were not steady. "Maggie," he said quietly. And for a moment I saw not a lawyer, but an old friend. A man who had watched my children grow and had watched Daniel's shoulders round over the years with work. "Sit," I did. My knees were aching from the walk the night before, and I could still feel the dust of that road on my skin, like a second layer of grief. Arthur lifted the deed. He did not speak at first. He held it the way a careful man holds a newborn, with both hands, with reverence. "This," he said at last, "is the heart." I watched his eyes move across the page, then up to meet mine. "This parcel," he said softly, 15 acres recorded under your maiden name, and the spring that runs under it. This is where the water lives." He swallowed. "Without it, they cannot plant. They cannot irrigate. They cannot sell a story about a thriving vineyard to anyone. The deal they are trying to cut is already broken. They just do not know it yet." I let out a breath I had not realized I was still holding. "They tried to move me like a piece," I said. "They did not see the board." Arthur gave the smallest hint of a smile. "I knew something was wrong," he said, a little anger finally breaking through his professionalism. "Ethan brought a document yesterday. He said it was Daniel's final instruction. But it read like corporate language, not Daniel's voice. The signature looked too clean. I told him nothing moves without you. He did not like that. No, I was sure he did not." From the street below, a delivery truck rumbled by. Distantly, I could hear voices from the bakery, the clinking of plates, the hiss of steam. Life was going on in Hazel Ridge. People were buying their morning coffee. Someone was laughing. No one knew that my children had tried to erase me. Arthur set the deed down in front of me. His voice was quieter when he spoke next. "Maggie," he said, "you are not just keeping them from selling. You are protecting what you and Daniel built across 2 lifetimes." I looked at him. "No," I answered. "I am protecting what love really meant." For a moment, neither of us said anything. Nothing in that room was dramatic. Nothing in that room was loud. It did not need to be. Some moments are made of paper and ink and a heartbeat. Arthur turned to the side table and pressed the start button on a small, aging printer. The machine woke slowly, then began to hum. The sound filled the office, steady, pulsing, rhythmic. Warm pages slid out one by one. With every sheet the printer released, something inside me settled. I could feel my own heart matching its rhythm. Calm, certain, alive. Arthur placed the first document in front of me and handed me a pen. "Sign here," he said gently, "and here. This is your statement of ownership. This is your formal notice that the land under your name is not for sale, not negotiable, not subject to transfer by anyone but you. And this," he added, placing one last page in front of me, "is the declaration of the Holloway Family Land Trust. Once it is recorded, this land is tied to legacy, not to profit." I held the pen. My hand shook at first, not from fear, from the weight of it all. I thought about the night Daniel and I slept on the floor of the farmhouse because the roof had leaked in a storm and the bedroom ceiling had caved in. I thought about harvests that barely paid the mortgage, about the raccoon that got into the cellar, about the first time a restaurant in Portland asked if we could supply them. I thought about Rachel on her 6th birthday, grape juice around her lips like a violet smile. I thought about Ethan, at 10 years old, holding twine in his small hands, his father's pride on him like light. My hand steadied. I signed. My name, not Daniel's. My name, not Ethan's. My name, not forged or borrowed or forced into a margin I did not choose. When I finished, Arthur exhaled. "It is done," he said. "It is beginning," I answered. He nodded once. "Maggie," he said, and there was warmth in his voice now, something like admiration. "I have seen people fight with rage. I have seen people fight with greed. I have rarely seen someone fight with mercy. You are not trying to ruin them." "No," I said. "That is not what I want." "What do you want?" I want them to understand what they almost became." Arthur was silent for a long moment. Then he said, "I will see to the filings today. They will not be able to move this sale forward. The developer will start calling them in a panic." A small sound escaped my throat. It was not quite a laugh. It was not cruel. It was simply release. "They thought I would beg them," I said. "They thought I would be grateful for a room." Arthur's jaw tightened. "You will not be going to any room. You will be going home when you are ready." I looked at him, and for a moment I felt very tired. Not defeated. Just tired in the way that comes after carrying something that is heavier than your own body. "Not yet," I whispered. "Not home. I cannot sleep in that house tonight. Not after what they tried to make it mean." He understood. "You can stay over the bakery for now. Marcy will not charge you." I nodded. I looked down at the stack of signed pages. I watched the ink settle. I watched my own name dry into permanence. For the first time since Daniel's funeral, I felt steady. Not happy. Steady. Across town, in an office with glass walls and polished chairs, Ethan stared at his laptop. His email inbox glowed with a new message from the development firm. The subject line was short. The language inside it was even shorter. "Deal suspended due to undisclosed ownership and water rights conflict. We will not proceed under current terms." He read it twice, then 3 times. His face went pale. Rachel stood near the window, both arms wrapped around herself. She had not touched her phone in several minutes. Her mascara had smudged. She looked like she had not slept. "What does that mean?" she asked, her voice small. "It means," Ethan said, each word cold and precise, "that someone just made the land worthless to them." Rachel closed her eyes. A tear slipped out. "I told you," she whispered. "I told you she would never give up the vines." Ethan did not answer. His jaw moved, like he was chewing on anger and shame and confusion and could not swallow any of it cleanly. Rachel turned away from him. She took out her phone. Her hands shook. She scrolled through the contacts until she found mine. For a long moment, she just held her thumb over my name. Then, with a breath that broke halfway out of her throat, she pressed. The prepaid phone in my pocket began to ring. I knew the number on sight. For one heartbeat, I considered letting it go quiet. For everything they had done. For the road. For the dust. For that moment when my son looked at me and used the word best like a blade. But I answered. "Mom," Rachel said. And at that single word, I heard it. Panic, guilt, and something I had not heard from her in years. "Love. I am sorry," she said, the words rushing forward. "I did not know he was going to leave you there. I thought we were going to talk to you. I thought we were going to ease you into it. I thought you would be cared for. I did not know. I did not know." Her voice cracked into quiet sobbing. For a long moment, I said nothing. I let her cry. The sound of it passed through me, into all the places that had been hardened by the last 2 days. When I finally spoke, my voice was calm. "Rachel," I said, "listen to me." The line went still except for her breathing. "You still have time," I said softly. "You still have time to remember who you were." On the other end, I heard a small broken sound, then a whispered, "Yes, Mom," like a promise she was making to herself, not to me. The call ended. I held the phone in my hand for several seconds after the line went dead. That was the first moment I allowed myself to let go of anger. Not all of it. Not enough to erase what had happened on that road. But enough to let something else begin to grow in its place. That afternoon, Arthur drove me back toward the vineyard. We did not go to the house. I was not ready for those walls. Instead, he turned down the long gravel drive that led to the southern rows, the oldest vines on the property, the ones Daniel had always called the elders. At the gate, something new stood in the earth, a wooden post, freshly set. The wood still pale, not yet darkened by weather. Bolted to it was a carved sign, simple and unadorned, but clear. Holloway Vineyards protected forever by the Holloway Family Land Trust. My breath caught. For a moment, I could not move. The late afternoon light washed over the sign, soft and gold. A breeze ran between the rows and the vines answered in a low rustle, leaf against leaf, like quiet applause. Down the rows near the trellis line, a handful of local kids from the high school had gathered, laughing, listening. I had seen some of them before, in the summer programs Daniel and I used to host. Now they were here again. I watched myself from a small distance and almost did not recognize the woman I was seeing. A woman with gray hair pulled back, sleeves, rolled up, showing a group of teenagers how to clip a cluster of fruit without tearing the stem. My feet carried me forward. I felt the earth give softly under my steps. I felt the air change as I entered the rows. Cooler here, sweeter, touched with that green smell that only exists under living leaves. Ethan was already there. He was not close. He was not interrupting. He stood several yards away, just beyond the first row, hands in his pockets, shoulders tight, face strained. When his eyes met mine, I saw it. Not defiance, not anger. Something quieter, something heavier. Shame. And beneath it, grief. The boy who once held twine in his small hands was still in there. He was buried under years of ego and distance and noise, but he was still there. I saw him. He knew I saw him. I did not speak to him. Not yet. Instead, I looked from him, to the vines, to the sign. The sign was not loud. It was not a billboard. It was a promise. This land will not be taken. This love will not be sold. This story will not end in silence. A soft wind lifted the leaves, and the light shifted. The whole vineyard glowed for a heartbeat, the way a body glows when a held breath is finally released. I turned back to Ethan, gave one small nod. Not absolution, not surrender, acknowledgement. You are seen. You are not unredeemable. You will have to decide what you are. His eyes shone. He looked away. The young students continued their lesson. Somewhere down the row, one of them laughed as a grape burst between his fingers. The sound was bright and harmless and full of life. I let that sound fill me. I let it settle the way ink settles onto a page. That evening, as the sun lowered and the sky turned the color of old copper, I stood at the edge of the vineyard and let my hand rest against one of the posts. The wood was warm. The earth smelled alive. The air hummed. They had left me on a dirt road, thinking I would disappear. Thinking I would give up. Thinking I would accept the quiet kind of exile that looks polite on paper. But roots remember. Quiet strength does not fade. It grows. So if anyone ever looks at you and says, "This is where you get off. Hear me now. Keep walking." Your story is not over until you say so. Sometimes, the people we love most are the ones who teach us what strength really means, not through comfort, but through loss. When Ethan and Rachel drove away that day, they believed they were ending a story, but they were wrong. Some stories do not end where others leave you. They begin again in silence, in the space where pain meets truth, and in the steady hands of someone who refuses to let love be rewritten by greed. Maggie Holloway did not fight with noise or fury. She fought with grace, the quiet kind that grows roots deeper than betrayal. Her victory was not about land or law. It was about remembrance, about reclaiming what mattered before ambition replaced gratitude. And as the wind moved through her vines, it carried more than the scent of soil. It carried forgiveness, and the sound of a heart rediscovering its purpose. There is a lesson in her walk down that dirt road. That dignity is not given. It is chosen. That silence is not weakness. It is focus. That even when the world tells you this is where you get off, you can still decide where your journey truly begins. If you have ever been underestimated, cast aside or told that your time has passed. Remember Maggie's steps. Every mile she walked was a reminder that resilience does not roar. It whispers, "I am still here." And maybe, as you listened to her story, a small part of you recognized your own, a piece of ground you refused to surrender, a truth you kept safe when others stopped believing. That is what stories like hers are meant to do, to remind us that every ending can be rewritten if we have the courage to keep walking. So now I would like to hear yours. Have you ever found strength in silence, or learned that peace can be a kind of power? Share your thoughts below, because stories only live when they are spoken, when they are remembered, when they are passed on. If this tale touched something within you, stay with us. There are more stories waiting, each one a quiet echo of courage, loss, and redemption. Subscribe, not just to hear the next chapter, but to walk a little farther together, through the quiet, through the storm, toward the place where hope takes root again.